The moment he laughed at her past, the room seemed to lose its air. What began as an awkward blind date turned into a quiet battlefield of dignity and pain, where one careless smirk threatened to reopen wounds she had spent years stitching closed. She lowered her eyes, not because she agreed with him, but because she was tired. Tired of explaining herself, tired of being reduced to the worst chapters of her life. And just when it seemed like silence would swallow her whole, a single father at the table leaned forward and everything changed. Before the story pulls you deeper, pause for just a second. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up for people when it matters most, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this exist because people like you still care. She had almost canceled that night. Standing in front of the mirror earlier, she had smoothed down her simple dress and stared at the faint scar near her wrist, a reminder of a life that once spiraled out of control. Years ago, she had been someone else entirely, younger, reckless, running from pain instead of facing it. Addiction had taken hold after a childhood marked by neglect and a string of relationships that taught her how disposable love could be. But she had survived it. Rehab, therapy, sleepless nights, and lonely mornings had reshaped her into a woman who valued quiet strength over loud approval. Still, blind dates had a way of dragging the past back into the present. The man across from her had seemed decent at first. Well-dressed, confident, charming in the shallow way that worked in elevator conversations. He asked polite questions, nodded at the right moments, and smiled just enough to seem interested. But then the conversation drifted, as it always did, toward history. When she mentioned, carefully and honestly, that she had rebuilt her life after some hard years, something in his expression shifted. Curiosity turned sharp. His smile thinned. And then came the mockery, thinly veiled, wrapped in humor, but cruel all the same. He joked about bad decisions, about people who messed up their lives and expected applause for fixing them. He laughed as if her survival was a punchline, her hands folded together on the table, fingers pressing tight as memories surged. The nights she slept on friends' couches, the shame of looking at her reflection and not recognizing herself, the long road back to self-respect. She felt small again, like she was 16 and being judged by adults who never bothered to ask why she was hurting. The restaurant buzzed around them, unaware, indifferent. She considered standing up and leaving, but exhaustion held her in place. Sometimes walking away felt like losing too. That was when she noticed the man at the neighboring table. He hadn't been part of their conversation, but he had been listening. Not in a nosy way, but in the way people listen when something sounds wrong. He was a single dad, though she didn't know that yet. His life showed in subtle details, the worn edges of his jacket, the phone on the table turned face down but close, as if he might need to answer quickly. His eyes carried the weight of responsibility and the quiet focus of someone who had learned to put others before himself. He had been on his own blind date too, but his attention had drifted as the mocking continued. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table with calm certainty. There was no shouting, no dramatic outburst, just presence, the kind that filled a room without trying. He spoke firmly, dismantling the cruelty with measured words and unwavering respect. He didn't insult the man who mocked her. He didn't raise his voice. He simply reminded him that a person's past was not a joke, that rebuilding a life took courage, and that empathy was not optional for decent human beings. He spoke as a father, as someone who hoped the world would be gentler to his child than it often was. The mocker faltered. Confidence drained from his posture as eyes around the room subtly shifted. Shame has a way of shrinking loud people when it's reflected back at them without malice. The man muttered something, avoided eye contact, and soon found an excuse to leave. His chair scraped against the floor as he retreated, leaving behind an awkward silence and an empty space filled with relief. She sat frozen, heart pounding, unsure whether to cry or laugh. No one had defended her like that in a long time, not without wanting something in return. The single dad offered her a small nod, not expecting gratitude, not asking for attention, just acknowledgement. In that moment, she felt seen, not as a cautionary tale, not as a collection of mistakes, but as a human being who had fought to be here. They didn't rush into conversation after that. There was a pause, a shared breath, the unspoken understanding that something important had just happened. Eventually, words came easily, not flirtatious or forced, but gentle and real. He told her about his daughter, about learning how to braid hair from online videos, about balancing work and parenthood with constant fear of getting it wrong. She spoke about recovery, about the quiet victories no one applauds, like choosing to stay sober on a bad day or learning to forgive herself. Time softened around them. The restaurant lights dimmed as tables emptied, but neither noticed. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to justify her existence. He didn't see her past as a liability. He saw resilience. He saw growth. And in him, she saw something she hadn't allowed herself to hope for: safety. Over the following weeks, their connection grew slowly, deliberately. No rushing, no grand promises. He introduced her to his world carefully, aware of the responsibility he carried. She met his daughter in a park on a sunny afternoon, nervous but honest. Children had a way of sensing truth. And the little girl warmed to her not because she tried too hard, but because she listened. She showed up. She cared. There were challenges, of course. Her past didn't vanish just because someone believed in her. There were days when old doubts whispered that she wasn't enough, that eventually he would see her the way others had. But each time, he met her fears with patience. He reminded her that everyone carried history, and what mattered was how they chose to live now. In return, she learned to trust again, to believe that love didn't have to be earned through suffering, that kindness could exist without conditions. She became part of a small, imperfect family that valued honesty over perfection, and slowly, the scars that once defined her became proof of survival rather than sources of shame. As the months passed, she thought often about that night, how close she had been to walking away from dating altogether, how a single act of courage from a stranger had altered the direction of her life. It wasn't just about romance, it was about dignity, about someone saying without hesitation that she mattered. If this story is beginning to touch something deep inside you, hold on to that feeling. Stories like this remind us of who we can be for each other. Near the end of that year, they returned to the same restaurant, not out of nostalgia, but gratitude. They sat at a different table, laughter replacing tension, hope replacing fear. She looked around and realized that moments didn't have to be perfect to be powerful. Sometimes, all it took was one person choosing compassion over silence. Before this story closes, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below and share what kindness means to you, or a moment when someone stood up for you when you needed it most. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that people are more than their pasts and that empathy can change lives, please like this video, share it, and engage with the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, reaching hearts that need them. Because somewhere, right now, someone is sitting at a table feeling small, hoping, just hoping, that someone will remind them they are worth defending.